Uh, I'm gonna try to explain the reason why the one drop rule is great. Is crazy to me. The one drop rule, if you don't know, is an American idea that came during and after slavery of African people who were brought to America. Um, the one drop rule stating that if you had a single drop of African blood in you, then you're African. And so, long story short, this is a problem because uh, to have one drop of blood and to claim that you're African, even though you may have other blood from other places that are from different cultures or different places, especially if it's more prevalent within the person, it it makes things like mixed people don't think like this. It's usually people who are on either side of being closer to either what would be called white or black in America, because white and black means different things in different places. The way to think about this is if any other group of people was considered for the one drop rule. If one drop rule was white, right? If you have a single drop of white blood in you, then you're white. How would that change how people think about things? Everybody would suddenly be white, right? I think so. Because you can't tell me that there in America there are not too many people in North America who don't have some Caucasian in them. That's just a matter of fact, and I'm particularly referring to people of color, people who are called black, or people who are descended from Negroes, or people who are descended from indigenous people who are descended from Africans. All of those people have some white in them, right? So flip it like that. One drop rule for white people, right? Or one drop rule for indigenous people. Everybody's going to be considered indigenous. So it really comes down to what these colors mean. And if you are willing to put yourself in, like, for example, the word black, if you want to consider yourself black because your skin color is dark and you have curly hair, that would be different than another person who would consider themselves black for a different reason, meaning that they have significant African blood and they come in, that's the culture of North America, after the 60s, between the 60s and the 80s, that developed, that is a word that black means, or somebody who simply thinks that it's a feeling and has to do with food and music that people, like a certain segment of people, are familiar with. All of those things, can be described as the same thing, but is not always and necessarily considered the same definition. Which is part of the reason why I'm bringing this to the table right now, because I'm a person, I do not identify myself as black, even though I know other people would, because I have curly hair and brown skin. Though in terms of my genetic makeup, black is, or African blood, which I'm assuming is the origin in the mind of most Americans of what they consider black, is African origin. So African origins in my specific chart is third on the list. This is because all my grandparents were mixed, and only one of them has lineage that is from Africa directly. And this I do know because of both family passing down information as well as genetic charts being done. My grandmother and grandfather on my mom's side, even though she's dark, is only partially African, and I mean like a third. I don't mean like 50% or anything like that. So long story short, recombination effect, you might get, when it comes to me, because obviously recombination would be my parents, and then it would break down again when it comes to me. So if I was to categorize how much African blood is in me, I would say it's between 15 and 20%, even though if you look at the matrilineal side, it would be like, obviously the skin and the blood are two different things technically. If you want to talk about the chromosomes and like origins and all that stuff, I can get into all of that. But long story short, In relation to me, this is the reason why I don't categorize myself as black, because first of all, I stand as the learning point for both people of color as well as people who are from different cultures about what those words mean and how those words were passed down to people through institutions like slavery, and how I do not agree with color codes in general, because people like to forget that yellow and red are color codes, but nobody walks around, well, indigenous people call themselves red, and mind you, just because someone has black skin doesn't mean that they're not red. There are black skinned red people all over the place. That's a part of that. It's about the culture and about where the origins of those people came from. You don't have Asian people walking around calling themselves yellow people, even though that would be the color code for an Asian person. So people who consider themselves black, they're choosing to call themselves black, but black in America has to do with the institution of slavery and Jim Crow laws, which originated in the South. Another example as to in relation to this is Brazil. Brazil, because of the transatlantic waterways, which means that naturally occurring waterways from Africa to the islands up to North America and back over to Africa, have existed as long as people have existed on boats. Like that's just purely simply true, because long story short, the tectonic plates in the continents move very slowly every year. So basically, the more back in time you go, the closer together the continents were in the first place. So long story short, the mixing of people is not a surprising thing. The issue is that black has a constitutional meaning that may or may not have been changed in reference to the humanity and rights of a person. The rights of a person, people often talk about the rights of people who come into America, and I mean this legally. I don't mean this illegally. I don't get into those issues because it's so complicated and it's sad to try to imagine about it, but like I'm talking about when people legally come into America and they have their culture and their country of origin and their heritage, they have protections attached because of those things, because of those identifying markers. The issue is that people who came to America as slaves or were in America and were taken as slaves, either one, had their rights, their identity, their culture, and their languages stripped from them so that they had nothing to call themselves. And then the slave owners and the people who were in charge of the economy